Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and comic artists. It's an absolute joy to be able to stand here and say welcome to our 4th Lakes International Comic Art Festival. And it's been quite a journey, and I think tonight is really the culmination of many of our goals. We're aiming to be distinctive, as you probably gathered, and also to offer a different kind of experience, a memorable one, it'll certainly be that tonight, but also one that goes just beyond the comics as well. At the same time, the festival is about both being serious and being fun, and it's also about celebrating the very best, the pioneers, the icons, the new talent, etc. So I think this evening really kind of speaks to that. But one of the kind of really critical things about the festival is partnership, and we couldn't do it on our own, nor would we want to, and there are many, many people in this room who've really contributed to making all of this possible for us. We're going to move quite swiftly on, because we've got a lot to cram in during the course of the evening, but this evening is, as you've probably gathered, presented by Lancaster University. And to quickly explain that context, I want to welcome onto the stage Professor Simon Guy, Lancaster University.
It's fantastic to be here. It's been a long time in the planning, as Julie said, and to get the buzz as you come into Kendal already, with the festival even not really fully kicked off, is amazing to see so many people in it. I believe it's a big sellout, and there are people without tickets, and BBC around, we're on the front page of Guardian online, so fantastic success already. So well done to Julie and all the festival team, I think. So Lancaster University is delighted to support the International Comic Festival, and in particular the opening night. And actually this is part of kind of ongoing collaboration and partnership between the university and the festival. And I met Julie briefly today and said once it's done, once the dust is settled, we're going to be sitting down and planning what to do next. So this for us is very much an expression of an ongoing and longer term kind of partnership. But reflecting back, I think it was about 18 months ago that we invited, 18 months ago, maybe seemed like shorter or longer, I'm not sure. Julie and I then come onto the university for lunch to try and explore potential collaboration. Now I didn't really know a lot about comic art before, and I wasn't particularly aware at the time that many of my colleagues at the university were interested in. I've subsequently found we have a lot of interest in the university in comic art. Anyway, we had a fabulous and very exciting, very energetic lunch, and very quickly came up with the idea of appointing the UK's first professor of comic art. And I have to say, it didn't take us very long to identify the best possible person for that chair, which is Benoit Peters. And one of the points of the evening for the university, and I think for the festival, is to celebrate the appointment of Benoit Peters as the Professor of Graphic Fiction and Comic Art in the Department of English and Creative Writing at Lancaster University. So I've already learned much from Benoit, Julie, the comic art world, and I realise it really is a world, and you can see from the festival quite how international it is. I think what's probably impressed me most so far about the comic art world is the ability of comics to reach out across generations. I've just been having a conversation with the person I've been sitting next to, waiting for this evening to start, about comics passed through from father to son and onward, and the enthusiasm for comics. So this ability, this connectivity to reach across generations, across history, across cultures, classes, communities. And as I've already discovered since we've introduced Benoit to university, the ability of comics to connect, get interest across disciplines, which is something we struggle with sometimes in universities, very quickly get siloed in our own little worlds. So comics is actually helping us within the university, I think, acting as a catalyst to get us to talk to each other. And I think, just a slight political point here, I think at a moment in history, when there are so many kind of political pressures which seem to be pulling us apart in all kinds of ways, I think this festival is really testament to the power of comics to pull us back together, and that's really, really very important. So tonight, 2 wonderful comic characters are going to bring us together, Asterix and Tintin. I love them both, but my son Lucas, who will be visiting the festival tomorrow, has made it very clear to me which way I should be voting. But I think I should probably wait to see how this debate plays out. So on that note, I'm going to stop. Thank you very much.
Lancaster University, and now I'm going to change the language. We're going to move very quickly and get you into the kind of mood of it. So I'm supposed to say, I think, blistering blue barnacles, which would be been practicing all night, it's not quite worked yet. And also, we've been told that we have a Gaul, to be trying to do this tool. It may never be done again. In fact, you may wish that it would never be done again. But we are confident we're going to have a great night. You are participants, you're not just audience, so please enjoy yourself. I'm going to hand you over now to the amazing, wonderful Hannah Berry, who is a comic art creator extraordinaire in her own right, and she's going to take you through the evening. So please welcome onto the stage, Hannah Berry. How are you doing? Guys, I have a clipboard. This is serious business. We have to use that to take it seriously. So I'll come prepared. This is not like a referendum that will lead to the decimation of the pound. It leads to your cousin's husband very vocally on Facebook making irreparable family rifts. This is not an election that will lead to a small-handed, what's-it-coloured sex pest becoming the leader of the free world. Much more serious than that. First of all, before we begin, we'd like to take a poll, a straw poll, to see where people are in the audience, where people are, where their opinions are. It's an opinion poll, if you will. First of all, we have some lovely assistants who will count you all, but we need to know who is in favour of Asterix.
Crikey.
Talk about yourself while you're being done. I cannot see a thing with the lights, but I'm assuming you've also got your hands up. It's very dangerous, this. It's a very, very dangerous poll.
Let's go 34.
About 20 people. 20 people. Loads. Flat the door.
Let's make a note. 20,000 people. Good. Sold out. Good to know. Are we counted?
Yes.
Okay. And now, how many for Tintin? Interesting. I'm glad that your name was to the mast as well. I'll allow it for now.
Yeah.
Are we all counted?
Yep.
Yeah, all counted? Okay, if I could ask the volunteers to come back with their numbers.
Yep.
And, no?
Yes.
Yeah, if you could bring me your numbers and I'll input them into the...
Yes.
Okay.
Asterix.
Asterix, okay.
Asterix 34.
Okay.
Tintin 30.
Okay. 20. Okay. Okay, so, right, I have a special polling machine, if you just bear with me for a moment. Oh, sorry.
Asterix 12 and Tintin 11.
Okay.
13 and Tintin 16.
Already getting controversial, and I don't want any fights breaking out. I'm not trained to hold anybody back. So I can tell you that so far, Tintin has 90 votes, that is 90 votes. Asterix has... Asterix has 71 votes. So take from that what you will. Enough about what you think. Let's find out what people in the world outside think. We have some vox pops which will be played to you now, I believe.
So Sergio, which do you prefer, Tintin or Asterix?
Well, between Tintin and Asterix, I grew up with Tintin. So Tintin has to be a very emotional appeal. I didn't learn too much for it because the drawings were so realistic, didn't have to do with anything that I created. But Asterix, later, he had the type of humor that I like and the type of silliness of the characters and everything. And he was a great, great influence. The two of them are very important cartoons for me, storytelling. Tintin was fantastic because he had adventure and everything, and I grew up with it when I was a kid. Asterix is more related to my career as a cartoonist because I knew the guys who did it. And I love the characters, I love the humor of it. It was more related to my style of cartooning. So both of them are very, very important. So if I had to choose, I don't know, I think Tintin because it was earlier to my growing up, and I think probably Tintin.
Interestingly enough, I discovered both when I was about 9 years old because we lived in Europe for a year, and that's where you could find these things back in, 1966, 67. I love both very much, but to me, I think I give the edge to Asterix because I love the adventure of Tintin, but I love the humor of Asterix, and that sort of relates to what I wanted to do in cartooning and what I appreciated. And I just love the artwork in it because it's beautifully drawn, but it's so funny. The drawings are really funny, the characters are really funny. I love the sort of strong consistency of the drawings. It's like animation. It's so well drawn and great animated styles. Clearly they were inspired by, I think, by a lot of American animation, I think, just by the way things are staged and the way characters are moved. So I really reacted to those poses very strongly. So for me, the edge goes to Asterix, but it's, it's like really close.
No, Tintin is better than Asterix.
Oh no! Oh yeah! Oh wait! Are you getting my face? Are you getting my face?
You are judges. Who's right?
Who is right?
Talent?
What I remember the most about Tintin from when I used to watch it as a little girl was actually Snowy, and how bright-eyed he was, and how he seemed to have this really thoughtful demeanour all the time, and very intelligent dog. And even now, as an adult, we've never had a pet dog, but if we did, it would have to be a wire fox terrier, of course.
I think Asterix is much better than Tintin. It's much funnier, I think the drawing's much livelier, and I think Dogmatics is much cuter than Snowy. My favourite moment in Asterix is the centrefold spread from the Mansions of the Gods, which is the brochure of the property development, the Mansions of the Gods. And in particular, I love the bit where it says that the wild boars frolic on the lawns. Asterix symbolises the indomitable spirit of the French, not only in resisting, of course, the ancient Romans, but also the German invaders, and ultimately the invasion of American imperialism.
Wow, so far, so controversial. Hisses. Well, we should probably introduce our teams, our debating teams, before we go any further, because otherwise there wouldn't be debate. Very important. Our first debater, I'm not sure I can really say that. Our first debater is Graham Jury. He's a British cartoonist, best known for his work on Viz. He was a creator of the Fat Slags and has been a contributor to the magazine since 1985, before becoming a part of the editorial team. Jury currently draws such cartoons as Biffa Bacon, Spoilt Bastard, Postman Plod, and Roger Melly. He has a dark past in cactus research. Welcome, Graham Jury. And look at that conference, you really just seem to be focused on the game here. I do appreciate that. Our next panellist has been a veteran of the comic industry for over 20 years. He spent the majority of his time since 2004 working on The Walking Dead, for which he has received many industry awards. He's worked on many other projects as far-reaching as Mars Attacks, The X-Files, Judge Dredd, Savage, Batman, X-Men, and Superman, and create your own projects like Astronauts in Trouble, Code Flesh, Rock Bottom, and White Death. Please, no, don't introduce, I've done that. Please welcome Charlie Adler. Our next panellist is the author of The Complete Guide to Asterix, so quite well researched, and has founded a research program at Oxford University in comics. On the side, he's a lecturer in German silent cinema, a furniture maker, the founder of a primary school in London, and a BAFTA-winning TV producer. Please welcome Peter Kessler. Unable to make it due to a previous debating injury, but I'm glad to see that this is not the case. Our next panellist for Team Tintin is a prolific comics writer, project manager on Electra Comics, and contributing editor on its flagship anthology. Together with her husband John Repkin, she has co-written such series as The Trial of Sherlock Holmes, Damsels, and most recently for 2008's Black Shuck. Her Irene Adler / Deja Thoris miniseries form part of Gail Simon's Swords of Sorrow crossover event for Dynamite Entertainment. Please welcome Leah Moore. I've written that down, I'm not sure that's the correct thing. Our next panellist is an illustrator and graphic designer and author, and has a PhD in the area of picture perception. He was a contributor to and editor of Sick Bag Comics, now in the Michael Hill collection at the Australian National Library. He is a founding partner, art director and illustrator for record label Hidden Shoal Recordings. Please welcome Stuart Medley. And our final panellist is an internationally celebrated comics writer, a novelist and a scholar, and has published over 60 works on a wide variety of subjects, including Tintin and the World of Hergé, and Hergé, son of Tintin. He is probably best known for Les Cités Obscures, sorry to all French people in the audience for the pronunciation there, and the multi-award-winning graphic novel series which he created with artist Francois Schwitten. He is the author of 3 short films as well as several documentaries, and has directed 1 feature film, Le Dernier Plan. Please welcome Benoit Peters. And now to moderate this, we have 2 illustrators. We have the first is an illustrator, cartoonist, animator and designer, and was recently nominated for Advertising Illustrator of the Year at the NCS Rubin Awards. His online work routinely goes viral. Specific hot trends include Kanye West Valentine cards and the Sad Chewy series. Together with his brother Joe, he heads up the design outfit Fantastic Heat Brothers and form indie duo Pop Noir, which we'll be playing at Ruskins tomorrow. Please welcome Luke McGarry. Cartoonist and illustrator, and winner of Illustrator of the Year awards from both the National Cartoonist Society in the US and the Australian Cartoonist Association. He was an integral part of the formative Manchester punk scene and designed record sleeves for, among others, Joy Division, Soldier and the Dogs, John Cooper Clarke and Jilted John. He served 2 terms as president of the National Cartoonist Society and is a recipient of the prestigious Silver T-Square Award given for outstanding service to professional cartoon. He's also, I've just found out, been working with Illumination on Minions, Despicable Me and Secret Life of Pets as a story artist. Please welcome Steve McGarry. So I think there's no time to waste. We should dive straight into the debates with, I believe it is, very professional, excuse me, is Benoit as the first speaker. If you would like to take the stage and tell us why we should vote for Tintin.
I like Asterix very much. But I must say I love Tintin. I will try to explain you why. If we can have a picture. pictures?
Conspiracy.
There have been issues of bribing this year, so.
The images disappear. Here you can see on the left. He was at the beginning of comics in Belgium, and I must say, without Hergé, without Tintin, which began in Belgium in 1929, there would have been no comics in Belgium, maybe no comics in France, and certainly no Asterix. There is an important first reason. But do you think we can have some images? Because I want to show something about the incredible potential of evolution of Hergé, and it will be a little difficult without this.
Shall we take on the
Hergé began his career in a very conservative newspaper, in a very conservative world, but his talent was to be able to go much beyond and to have this incredible creation, step by step, year after year, book after book. And every book of Tintin we can remember as a special story, with a special graphic style. At the beginning, it was in black and white. It was very simple, very dynamic. It was a style which is close to some modern graphic novels. A lot of people, when they look at the first Tintin created by the author himself, without any collaborator, they think that Hergé is really modern. Second image, Hergé as a war artist. You will have to have
You'll get bonus points, Benoit. You'll get extra points.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Yes, okay. So this is Hergé at the end of his career as a well-renowned artist. It was the moment where I had the great pleasure, the great luck to meet him and to speak with him about his career. This is Tintin is the land of the Soviets, and the graphic style from the beginning. You see directly that the dynamic was there, the sense of the composition. The central image is just incredible. And we have forgotten this type of quality of Hergé. Some people say the first Tintin were badly drawn. Some people say they are politically insane. And it's a fact that Tintin in Congo is certainly not the best book. But if you read carefully Tintin in the land of Soviets, you will see that there is no shame. This is the style of Hergé in the middle of the 30s. Incredibly elegant, the Blue Lotus. Hergé changed a lot of elements, but it's still very clear. You understand directly that we are in China. You see China through few elements, but even a small child can directly understand what is happening and see the smoke conducting to the mysterious character behind the window. It's beautifully drawn, but perfectly narrative. Of course, some of us know that Armstrong was not the first man on the moon. Destination Moon and Explorers of the Moon are so beautifully told that we really believe that Tintin and his companion were the first men on the moon. And there is a beautiful drawing of Hergé showing his characters saying welcome to the American astronaut. But see how beautiful this picture is. See how we feel the epic dimension of this adventure. We traveled through the world with Tintin, but we were able to travel in a realistic way into space. Hergé wanted always to improve himself from Tintin to Tintin with the art of storytelling, with beautiful characters, fascinating characters that we will see in a few seconds, but also this type of emotion, of tragic, that was never tried in comics. Of course, at the was a sort of bad guy. And he was able to fight without any drugs. He was... But of course, this was just the primary period of Tintin, and he was able to become wiser and clever, be a good detective. He was able to meet other people, other civilizations, like in the Blue Lotus, with this incredible anti-racist sequence when Tintin meets Chan, a young Chinese boy, and they are communicating. I don't know in which language, but they communicate very well, and they discover each other's countries. And maybe you know that Hergé really met a young Chinese art student at that period, and he was transformed. He was totally transformed, and he respected every country, every civilization since that moment, mid of the 30s. Hergé is able to create very, very different story, to introduce fantastic elements, to introduce nightmares. He respects children, but he can be, in a way, impressive. And when I was a child, I found this, in a way, too terrible, but I was fascinated. I'm still fascinated. Still emotion. This story, Tintin in Tibet, was created in midlife crisis of Hergé. He was in a very difficult situation. He went to a psychoanalyst who said to him, you have to stop your work, you have to reconstruct yourself. But he tried to do it through his book, through his story. And when you read his story, I think you laugh at certain moments, but maybe you cry at the end of the story. And this is unique in bande dessinée, in comics at that time. We have those incredible characters, the representatives of police, of authority, of order. Some people think that Hergé was very conservative, but look at Thompson and Thompson. They are just ridiculous. And the cliché age, which was the meaning of Hergé in his youth, but of course, they are very, very funny. Haddock is a fascinating character. At the beginning, he's just an alcoholic, but he's able to transform, to become a character like in the best novels. We want to know all about his life, and we could write a biography about Haddock, which is not the case of certain characters in other series. You call this man calculus. You don't see a lot of calcul here. We call him in French tournesol, sunflower, which is much more poetic. And this character is also incredible. What an evolution, what a career. Just I finished with the art of comics through Hergé. We could speak for long minutes about such an image. How to clean the stair, how to make it directly clear in the layout of the page. Everybody can understand it directly, but at that moment, in 1931, nobody has created this type of thing. Hergé just invented the language. Still those compositions, the ability to use small images, big images, every type of panels, and to give us the impression that we are with Tintin on the move, that we really feel it. And this type of humor, because of course, some people forget that Tintin is incredibly funny, but not only with word plays, also with image plays. Here, you look at each image, it's already good. You look at the three of them, and you understand something perfectly. Only comics can make this, and Hergé was probably the first to do it.
Thank you very much for that, throwing down the gauntlet. We can go now to our illustrators to see how they've responded to the gauntlet that's been thrown. Steve? And Luke? I'd like to introduce our second speaker. I could see him bristling during that talk. So please try and restrain yourself. Peter Kessler.
Benoit said he... Oh, not again.
I should say, when there was bribery to sabotage, it was from both sides.
Benoit said he liked Asterix, but he loves Tintin. I'm slightly different. I grew up really wanting to like Tintin and failing repeatedly. And I hope to persuade you why that's the case. Now, Asterix, as many of you will know, was created by Goscinny and Uderzo for a magazine called Pilote. He was one of the founding strips of Pilote. He was actually the emblem of this particular comic, and it was a revolutionary comic because it was creator-owned. And this was 1959, something that only really hit other sort of Western publishing houses decades later. And it was created, it was an atmosphere of creative freedom, open expression, and anti-authoritarianism. And Asterix was really the symbol of this new attitude. He's individual, he's quirky, he's unconventional, but he's powered by an inner strength. And that inner strength in the comics is magic potion. In real life, that is self-belief, not drugs. He was designed to be the French answer to Mickey Mouse. He was 2 fingers up against the world of corporates and multinationals, as represented, of course, by the uniform, all-conquering Roman army. Asterix doesn't want to conquer the world. He wants to be left in peace to enjoy his life in his little corner of the world. And he will defend that right with all of his strength. Well, this is something that I could really relate to. Tintin, on the other hand, was created as a poster boy for the conservative Catholic newspaper, Le 20th siècle. Now, as I'm sure you all know, Le 20th siècle was under the direct control of Abbot Norbert Wallace, who was a supporter of the ultra-right-wing Action Française. And ultimately imprisoned, so keep my back to Benoit here, ultimately imprisoned for collaborating with the Nazis. Now, there's nothing subversive about Tintin in the same way that there is about Asterix. Quite the reverse. Tintin sets out to bring Western Belgian culture, and he imposed it on the poor fools living in the rest of the world. Benoit was talking about the art, and I thought the images that he showed us were, of course, beautiful. And I don't deny that the art of Tintin is beautiful. He's famous, Hergé is famous for having invented this style, a ligne claire, the clear line. But for me, this is a battle between a sketchiness that you find with Asterix. It's what I would think of as a sketchy sort of humanity versus a two-dimensional stillness that I see in Tintin. Ligne claire does not necessarily make for comic stories that flow with life. What it makes is great individual pictures, but I've always felt that those Tintin stories feel like a sequence of tableaus. Asterix is not ligne claire, it's more ligne cassée, the broken line. The broken line is life. They don't brim, those Tintin pictures, they don't brim with the pulsing life that Asterix has. I suppose it's like the difference between the careful and the carefree. Look at the eyes. Those Tintin eyes are two black dots. They're dead eyes. Now there's also the question of the sheer variety in the character of the drawn figure. So Asterix and his friends just fizz with life, expression, visual humour. Now when looking for images to illustrate this particular point, I literally opened an Asterix book at random, Asterix and the Normans, and I looked at page 1, and this is what I saw. This is all from page 1. You see Asterix, enraged, alarmed, confidential. I know what that emotion is, I call it, shut up you idiot! Cheerful, intrigued, dumbfounded. All in one page. Now, I then opened a Tintin book at random. And this is what we see for Tintin on page 1. An emotion that I can only describe as, I think a foreigner just told me what to do. The art goes further. One of the greatest skills of the comic artist is to create a sense of flow through the page. And Uderzo is an absolute master of picking out the key moments in an extended sequence of actions, where showing only the start and end would be inappropriate. This is Golden Delicious, tasting Asterix's cooking in Laurel Wreath. And I just love the movement of Obelix's body in this particular sequence from Asterix the Legionary, which combines delicacy and destruction in a moment of perfect human comedy. In fact, Uderzo's characters flow so naturally that they seem virtually to break out of the confines of the page. Tintin, on the other hand, seems imprisoned by the very edges of every frame. Here are two comparable pages. One from Cigars of the Pharaoh, the other from Asterix and the Great Crossing. It's telling, I think, that Tintin stays within the safe confines of his little boat, while the Gauls leap straight into the sea. And I think that sums up the difference for me. I'd rather read about characters who get out of the boat. Now we come on to the question of story. So both of these characters are globe-trotting. They feature globe-trotting adventures in which the lifestyles of our heroes are shown to be superior in some way to those of the countries they visit. But there are certain crucial differences. Asterix has always alternated between adventures abroad and adventures at home. And this is a vital tradition, because it shows that travelling around pointing out the faults of others is only half the story. Showing your own faults is just as important, as is being in touch with your own roots, preserving your own culture, and welcoming visitors to your own land. Tintin only ever travels. We can't look in his closet. It's either private or it doesn't exist. When Tintin travels abroad, it's normally because he's been sent by his editor or is out to smash some international crime cartel. No one asks him to turn up and solve their problems for them. He does it whether they want him to or not. Now, the writers of Asterix take a very different approach. In almost every case of a foreign trip in Asterix, the cause is of someone in that country inviting the Gauls to go and help out. Edifice the architect comes from Egypt, Anticlimax comes from Britain, what's his name comes from India, Boney was a warrior way X comes from Corsica, Pepe comes from Spain. So they all come to Gaul and the Gauls help them out. They take it upon themselves to return a captive to their homeland or sort out a problem that they're asked to go and sort out. Tintin, well, it's a question of respect. And I do find the early Tintin stories so horrific that I actually find them quite hard to read. In Tintin of the Congo, he mirthlessly jokes about how stupid the natives are because they can't follow his instructions about how to mend a train quickly enough. There are also constant jokes at the expense of animals being shot to pieces or mercilessly eviscerated. The whole thing is a bit like reading Cannibal Holocaust, the graphic novel. Asterix, on the other hand, has stories that make fun of everyone in equal measure, not least the Gauls themselves. And all the time, there is a gentle, humane smile behind the humour, and that is the smile of René Goscinny. There he is, as drawn by Uderzo, a man who had a knack for character, situation comedy, and self-deprecation that lent poignancy and humanity to everything he wrote. And a man who, as a Jew born in Argentina, would have been derided by dear old Abbot Wallace and Action Française. Thank you.
I'd like to say just for legal reasons that the late cannot be held responsible for any night terrors you have due to Tintin's cold dead eyes. I think we're now to see how Steve has responded to. And Luke? Our next speaker on behalf of Tintin, Leah Moore.
There we go. Okay. When I was asked to put the case for Asterix or Tintin, I was torn. It's like being asked whether you want to go and live with mummy or go and live with daddy. It's really just, I had a big stack of both. I was very lucky as a kid. I was brought up on comics, so I had a big stack of Tintin and an equal size stack of Asterix. And I have to say, when I was asked, it took me a long time to think. What it came down to for me was that Tintin opened the door to my young mind, of possibilities of storytelling and genre and things that I was allowed to like and be into and things that I was allowed to then go on to be passionate about later on in life. So these very kindly provided by Benwell, because otherwise I'd been immersed in Google. Basically, even in, as you were saying, these early drawings, you can see there the film noir kind of, the darkness, the tension, even though it's silly, even though he's like a small, kind of weird-looking character in high socks, he still, the situations he gets into are straight from some kind of film. There's gangsters, there's all kinds of really serious kind of mystery parts going in there. There is sci-fi and like James Bond style espionage stuff throughout. When I read these, I'd never seen, these kind of films. I was completely and utterly at the mercy of Hergé and his whims. So what is that about? What is that? Honestly, when I sat there and I read it, and I was thinking, okay, I'm following you. There's this little guy, and he goes off with this bearded alcoholic and his tiny dog, and he goes to these other countries, and he meets some funny people from other countries, and then exploding mushrooms. If then I went on to like watch Journey to the Centre of the Earth, or 50,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it opens your mind and makes you think, okay, actually, I know where I am with this. The drama, the darkness, the tension, the storytelling. As a comic writer, the storytelling in Tintin, the panels he chooses to use, Hergé chooses to use, are things that I am certain, if you were to do a swipe file of my comics over the years, there is going to be definitely Tintin panels just pasted in there, just copy paste, because he does. Let me see if there's a. Okay, as an establishing shot, you cannot really beat the amount of detail, the amount of depth, the amount you know what size of city you're in, you know how many people there are in it. You can see from that perfectly composed panel exactly what is going on. So if I'm going to write a comic, I know exactly how much I need to put in to make sure that that's gotten across. I hadn't actually seen this one before. This is a little bit too dramatic for my liking. Rescue people from rivers. But again, you see the composition of panels, the way that you can actually follow the story, and the drama of the hand. I've definitely swiped that one. I've swiped 100% swiped it. Right. If you're a 9-year-old girl and you're in Northampton, which is the Midlands, not even the interesting bit of the Midlands. We didn't even have like Slade or anything. But then actually being told as a 9-year-old girl, yes, you're allowed to like rockets, you're allowed to like spies, you're allowed to like weird black and white movies, you're allowed to like any kind of strange and dark and impenetrable, sometimes impenetrable, a little bit. And do you know, although I'm not going to resort to denigrating the other team's subject, I don't think I need to, but I do think that Tintin sets you up to have incredibly good taste for the rest of your life. Like, drawing aside a veil over the tasteless part, I think that in terms of what you can then go on to really, really get a buzz out of when you've been given Tintin, then I think it's very hard to beat. So, yes.
Available in the foyer. To our resident artist, Steve, what do you have for us?
Strapped on that one a bit, but there we go.
Luke is still going.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Okay. From around the world, around the world? Around the world, let's say around the world. And here they are. Here they are.
I'm for Asterix, because I am Asterix. Well, that sounds quite arrogant. Maybe Tintin. Darcy?
I like Tintin because of his adventures and Snowy the dog.
I'm Tintin. I prefer, given the choice between Asterix and Tintin, I would go Tintin every time. The marvellous work of Hergé, real name Georges Remy, of course, when he created the Boy Adventurer in the early Scouting magazine, transformed the way I looked at comic books. What? And Surrey, whose real name of course was Milou. Marvellous work, incredible adventure. Who can forget the Castle Fiori diamond? What a remarkable piece of work that is. And Captain Haddock himself, what a joyous and wonderful creation. What the f*** is wrong with all of you?
Hello everybody. Well, it's probably pretty easy to see, isn't it, which camp I'm in. It's definitely one of Asterix the Gaul. Here he is. Here's his friend Obelix, and here's little Dogmatics. I remember the names. They're so brilliant character names. The stories from around the world, from events like the Olympics and going to fight the Normans and everything else, and of course bashing Julius Caesar and his legions. The name Cacophonix, the bard, amazing ideas from Goscinny and Uderzo, beautifully drawn, illustrated, special characters. Definitely one winner for me, Asterix the Gaul.
Time is a wasting, and our next speaker is Charlie Adlard for Team Asterix.
I like Tintin very much. I love Asterix. For me, when I was 6 years old, my dad took me to was going to fill up the car with some petrol. In the petrol station, they had on offer some Asterix books. If you filled up the car, you could get an Asterix book after a certain amount of petrol. I badgered my dad to go back to that very same petrol station over and over again to get another Asterix book. And I think it was the Gladiator, the Gaul, the Legionnaire, and the Big Fight. Those are the 4 ones you could get. I wasn't even aware they were French. They were just brilliant, beautifully drawn stories. And here's a great example of the comedy of Uderzo and Goscinny. I will approach it, being an artist myself, I'd like to think anyway, as from an artistic point of view, and praise the genius that is Uderzo. Here is just a fantastic example of the comic timing of the man. I mean, you just don't get that in Hergé, sorry. And also, I mean, look at that spread. I mean, that must have taken hours and hours and hours to draw, but it feels like you're there. I'm sorry, but when, I see some of the Hergé spreads, yeah, they're kind of technically well drawn, very nice, but even with spreads like that, there's kind of a life to them. There's just a sense of actually being there. I mean, that's Uderzo at the height of his powers, I think. That is Caesar's gift. And no, it's not. It's the laurel wreath. Sorry, I got it completely wrong. But that is just one of the things that floored me. I remember opening that book at that time, and it was just absolutely stunning. Again, I mean, look at that. Look at every individual character on that panel. They must have drawn, what, 30, 40 people there? They are all individual characters with all different stories. I mean, again, what an amazing composition as well. Draws the eyes to the right characters. You've got that semicircle of those fantastic pieces of caricaturing there that Uderzo did. Again, height of his powers. And, summing up, look at the historical accuracy as well of ancient Rome there. Back to the comedy. I mean, I was literally putting pins in Asterix books I could have spent days researching this to find the best comedy moments. I literally just got a couple of my favourite books and opened them on a random page. And you get comedy genius each time. More comedy genius. I mean, you cannot really describe it anymore. It's just there. It's just there on the page. It's just absolutely hilarious. And it's the perfect example of writing an art. Goscinny was incredibly funny. His scripts were genius. But if it wasn't for the drawings of Uderzo to translate those words into just comedy gold, I mean, in a lot of ways, the drawings are the funniest part of that strip, because just the expressions on the characters and everything are just phenomenal. And perhaps my favourite cover of an Asterix book. You see, Uderzo could also paint. So I don't think I can recall seeing a Hergé painting. So enough said. Asterix in Switzerland, folks. And of course, my favourite Asterix book of all time, which is Asterix and Co. I think also, I can't recall the Hergé book there is a critique on business, whereas you have an Asterix book which is 48 pages of a critique on the world of business and finance and everything. And you know, if you're growing up in, you know, you want to be educated in finance, I would recommend Asterix and Co, because I think that teaches you more about the world of banking, the world of finance, the world of money than anybody could teach you. And I think that might be the last one, but again, I selected that one just pretty much for Uderzo's caricaturing there. You know, look at those senators at the bottom there. I mean, just utterly, utterly, startlingly brilliant. And one last thing.
Do we have security? Was there I'd like to introduce our final speakers for Team Tintin. Tintin. Stuart. I'm not a professional. We need first of all to cut to the McGarrys and see what they've been doing. Sorry about that, that was totally my fault. Now I'd like to introduce from Team Tintin, Stuart.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone noticed the violence to dogs. And also the idea that, you know, humour equates with violence. This is a violent nature thing. They get their reading.
12 years during The Walking Dead.
Get their reading material from garages as well. I get mine from the library. Right. So I want to speak about what Hergé didn't do, about his restraint, his mastery over the drawing medium. You'll notice like a lack of spokes on this wheelchair. It's subtle, but it's important. He's the Miles Davis of drawing. It's what he left out as much as what he put in. Wonderful as an artist. Tintin in Tibet just is. And Charlie really shouldn't have raised the issue of detail. We're talking about Hergé, he's like the grand master of detail. Peter mentioned the clear line, as if there's one line. And maybe if you enjoy your comics being, you know, being slapped in the eyes by this thick brushwork from panel after panel, constantly, everything turned up to 11, you probably wouldn't notice the subtlety that goes on in the Hergé drawings. But there's two lines. There's the lines for the man-made stuff, the architecture, the buildings, the dazzling equipment. And then there's dip, that's a tech pen, and then there's a dip pen for the living things, for the people, the trees you can see through that doorway. Very subtle separation, but it does give those things life. And importantly, there's a contrast. You don't get contrast in Asterix. Everything, as I said, is at 11. The animals, they all have a life of their own. We'll ignore the very early Hergé. But he became much more zen as he learned about the world. And he was willing to admit his mistakes. But here you can see the life he gives to animals. He's not violent to dogs. He's not even violent to spiders. So this spider escapes Rastapopoulos' boot, you'll be glad to know if you weren't familiar with that story. So there's this Zen thing going on, this lovely separation, this yin and yang between the living world and the constructed world. There's this incredible clarity that we know about from Hergé's work, the rejection of shadows, because what he realised is that to communicate clearly, you need to
make the characters very clear. Just keep the colour consistent. It doesn't matter whether Tintin's outdoors or in the darkest tomb. You just want to communicate this is the same character going from panel to panel. Now, psychologists of vision have only just kind of caught up with this stuff in the last few decades. Hergé knew about this many more decades before they did, and he articulated it. He wasn't just guessing at it with his artwork. He's on record in interviews of talking about this stuff. So about the level of detail and accuracy that he would put into the buildings and the machinery, and then how he would abstract further away for the living things to give them appeal, to give them that looseness and that liveliness. You don't need to appeal, you know, to the reader about buildings. Uderzo uses the same line for everything. It's this big fat brush, right? Who needs cute buildings? We don't want cute buildings. Right? We want a separation. Okay, so what I'm leaving you with is this thought that Hergé was ahead of everyone in defining what is so special about comics. This clarity of communication from panel to panel about characters, the appeal, this beautiful line work. Tintin is comics. Thank you very much.
I'm surprised I have to say this, but thank you for leaving the dogs alone. Can we go from Gary and see what they say?
There you go. There you go.
Oh. And now we go to our final speaker for Team Asterix and our final speaker of the evening, Graham.
Can I first say before I start that it's wonderful to be here talking in this event. And, very pleased it's remained on a friendly, amicable basis. It's degenerated to a Trump and Clinton style slang match where we're just trying to discredit the other side. Having said that, earlier this afternoon, Peter, Charlie and me were in a charity shop doing some voluntary work, and the charity shop. Put that out your mind, because that's not important to this issue. I'm going to argue the case for Asterix on a technical point. I want to show you that Uderzo is a fantastic artist and Hergé isn't. I know a lot of people say, well, you can't say this. It's a matter of opinion. It's a very subjective thing, but it's not. There's a very simple test that determines whether somebody is a good artist or not. A very simple, reliable test, and it's this. That's the test. Can they draw horses? It's very simple, and it does work. It does work as a test. You only got to look through artists through history. You've got Henry Mans here, fantastic artist. So it does work. It does work as a test. So it works because the horses are very, very difficult things to draw. The shape of their heads doesn't make sense, and their legs all bend in the wrong direction to the wrong places. Only a really good artist can do them. Comic artists struggle, particularly. I think for a comic artist to draw a horse in their cartoon is a bit like an actor to do a sex scene in a film. They will do it, but it's got to be essential to the plot. Drawing horses is doing a sex scene when Uderzo is an absolute porn star. Asterix is just full of page after page of these fantastically drawn horses. Forget about essential to the plot as well. These are gratuitous, hardcore horses. They're fantastic. The movement and line in them. They're not just standing around in fields. That would be difficult enough. These horses are running and jumping and shying and throwing the riders. It really is inspirational stuff. And there's no end of them. They really are. It's inspirational. I remember a few years ago, I did a fat slag story where the girls wanted to learn to ride. So they went to some stables to take lessons. And I tried always to do this story where I didn't have to draw horses. So the night before I started, I got my Tintin, sorry, not my Tintin, I got my Asterix books out, and I went through them just looking at all these fantastically drawn horses, how it did it. And I took real inspiration from it. I knew I could emulate it, but the next day I set about my task with renewed enthusiasm, with growing confidence, and with an enormous stack of tracing paper. There's a lot of children in the audience, so there's the result, but I'll skip through this one very quickly. So we know Uderzo can draw horses, and he's therefore a fantastic artist. What about Hergé? Well, brace yourselves. It's the small brown thing towards the... And in case you think it's a dog or a goat, he's very cleverly put a little clue in the text. Why did this take so long to find? Because I went through 3 times before I discovered this horse. I didn't actually see the one that Stuart just brought up on the screen there. So, a more cynical man than me would say that Hergé is deliberately writing his stories and not putting horses in. Because he knows he can't draw them. They are noticeable by their absence. They're not there where they clearly should be. In all these stories, Tintin's accompanied by a small white dog, Snowy. Why isn't that a horse? Or something. The Thompson twins escape across the field or something in a vintage jeep. Why weren't they on horseback? In Red Rackham's Treasure, Tintin goes to the bottom of the ocean in a submarine shaped like a shark. How much more exciting that story is. But he didn't draw that because he can't draw horses. Therefore, he's not a very good artist. Now, what Mark and Stuart and Lear are going to say, they're going to say, on the contrary, Tintin books are full of horses, loads of them, very well drawn ones as well. They're going to say that I've just ignored those because they don't add any weight to the argument. They're going to say that I've been very selective and chosen this one deliberately because it's the only one that adds any weight to the rather feeble argument that I'm making. That's what they're going to say. But what you've got to remember is these people are shoplifters. I know Tintin perhaps won the vote when we came in, but unlike the Brexit thing, we've got a second chance to put this right. Don't wake up with buyer's remorse tomorrow. Vote
I'm slightly hesitant to say this now, after this talk of horses and pornography, but what have you got for us? Take it away.
Tintin, in this team, I think they were a little obsessed. Of course, we can say that Tintin and Congo and the beginning of Tintin were not masterpieces. Hergé was the first to say this. But the end of Asterix, we have to think, the end of Asterix is really terrible. I'm extremely sorry to remind you that Goscinny, who was a genius, died in 77. And still this moment, there has been a lot of Asterix books, worse and worse and worse. And this doesn't arrange the theory. Hergé, who was an artist, didn't want that any Tintin was created after his death. He was not just making books, he put his whole life in the books. He tried to express himself as an artist in a medium that was not considered at that time. When Hergé creates a joke in a book, sometimes it doesn't show it precisely. You don't see it directly. It's very elegant. You read it 10 years later, 20 years later, and suddenly you discover something that you have never seen, that you have never read. I think that Tintin was read from generation to generation, from country to country. Now it's in China. There was no tradition in China to read comics, and they discovered Tintin, and children discovered Tintin, and they continue to read. So I think he's a classic in the best sense of the term, but he's also incredibly funny. If you don't believe it, read it again.
Peter, do you have a rebuttal?
Okay, so it's all very well to say Asterix doesn't end that well, but Tintin is all the way through by Hergé. I'm afraid Tintin isn't all the way through by Hergé. Ask Steven Spielberg about that, and I think you'll agree that Tintin doesn't end too well either. But at least in Asterix's case, all the works by Goscinny and Uderzo are ones that we can admire, and I'm afraid Hergé is responsible for all the Tintin books. So really just as one final point, I just wanted to say, you probably already know this, but in Japan, they can't call Tintin Tintin, they have to call him Tan. And the reason for this is because Tintin has another meaning in Japanese, which I'm not sure I can really say it. It's like this particular audience, I don't know if you can help me out, guys. Okay, yeah. The words say it all.
Thanks, I think.
It's Hal here. Roger Taylor here. I think I prefer Tintin or Tintin.
Hello, Bill Morrison here. I've been asked to give my opinion on which is better, Asterix or Tintin, or as we say here in the States, Tintin. I know you hate that. Well, it's tough because both are incredibly well written, incredibly well drawn. I love them both. I love the animation style of Asterix, and I love the simplicity of Tintin. But I would have to say, based on the fact that Tintin has two things that I love, a dog and rocket ships, I'm going to have to go with Tintin. Sorry, Asterix. It was close, but no cigar.
My vote's for Tintin because I love all the adventures he has, and Snowy the dog is really, really cute and fluffy. And I also love Professor Calculus because he's really crazy and stupid and does silly things all the time.
Well, thank you for sitting through these arguments, and I hope you've learned a little something about Tintin and Asterix, maybe yourselves. It's now time to do another audience vote. And this is the final vote. This is the vote that counts. This is the vote that matters. This is the one which decides which of these two titans will remain forever in our hearts, and which will be resigned to a skip. There's a skip outside, right? There's a skip. So if you would like to now raise your hands if you are for Asterix. And keep them raised so our assistants can count them up. Let me just get my high-tech piece of equipment ready. Okay, are we all counted? Good to go? Okay, and now if you could raise your hand if you prefer Tintin. Julie, take back onto the stage and we'll tally up the scores with my Thank you, Hannah, and thank you all the participants. We are going to do a bit of a to be continued, if you'll bear with us, and it's a bit of a commercial break, bonus material. We've got two other very, we think, exciting announcements to make this evening. So if you're all happy to stay here for just those few minutes longer, we're going to announce those two awards, and then we're going to come back to that essential vote and award the prize to whoever has won from these two rather dodgy, combative but wonderful teams. So the first award is the Comics Laureate. I don't know how many of you already know about it. It was something that was created back in 2014 by the Comic Literacy Awareness Trust, and it was awarded to a fantastic artist in its first year, which was Dave Gibbons, who is known for many things, but particularly for The Watchmen. It's not just a title. He's been out working very hard for 2 years, involved in all sorts of events. It's actually about getting across to people the power of comics for education, inspiration and literacy, amongst other things, and for how it can bring passion out of young people, as well as adults, of course. Dave has now had to relinquish, sadly, the Comics Laureate. It's run for 2 years, and LICAF is very fortunate to be able to adopt the Comics Laureate post, and we're going to take it forward with vigour, as you can imagine. There's been a rigorous nomination process, and we are able this evening to reveal who the next incumbent will be. But before we do that, we're going to invite Dave, who's travelled especially this evening to relinquish, to the stage to say a few words about the Comics Laureate position and what he's been up to. Dave Gibbons.
Tintin. Yeah. Well, that does come from a man who spent his whole career avoiding drawing horses. Well, thank
thanks Julie for the introduction. Happily she's covered much of what I was going to say in my speech, which is a bonus. Unless you want to hear it all again, you can. But it's amazing to me that it is sort of 2 years ago since I stood here and accepted the post of Comics Laureate. It was set up, as Julie said, by an organisation called CLAW, which sounds rather ominous, but it's Comics Literacy Awareness Trust. And it's organised to begin with. There's a guy called Paul Register, a school librarian, who's been very passionate in trying to get comics into schools. And he came around my house and asked me if I was prepared to show up and show off, which I always am. So they thought I'd be a good spokesman for it. And it has been quite a busy 2 years, particularly to begin with. There was a flurry of interest because it's quite a jokey thing. It caught the attention of journalists because it's like, oh, you know, you've got a poet laureate, and you've got a children's laureate, and you've got a comics laureate. So I found myself on the radio with Claudia Winkleman, which was very good. She knew a lot about comics, and I also found myself talking to the literature editor of The Sun. We'll take it where we can get, really. So I did a lot of radio and a lot of press to begin with, and that sort of got the idea of Comics Laureate around, and that has now been appended to my official biography. So any time I do a question and answer, I'm always asked about being the Comics Laureate, which is good. And I've been to a few schools, and I've been to a few meetings of grown-ups as well. In particular, there was the School Librarians Association. And it was a bit of a revelation to me, actually, because in the days when I went to school, as I outlined the 2 years ago when I was appointed laureate, you know, it was a very repressive culture as far as comics were concerned, including actually physically burning comics. And it was great to be amongst people now who actually love comics and were really keen to introduce them to schools. So in a sense, we were sort of pushing on a door that wasn't really locked. I suppose actually one of the reasons why I like Tintin, it occurs to me now, is that at the school that I went to, that was the only comic that was allowed on school premises. And but we had to have the French edition, so that we had some educational thing. And I didn't bother to read it in the French, but to this day, that red and white moon rocket just fills me with huge excitement and joy. Another very important meeting that I went to was the National Union of Teachers Reading for Pleasure Conference. And again, it was the same experience. In fact, one of the teachers there handed me a pamphlet that had been out in the 50s that was written by the then head of the National Union of Teachers, talking about this terrible corrupting influence that was coming across the Atlantic and how parents and teachers should do everything they could to exterminate these terrible comics. And he handed it to me with a smile. And everybody there was very enthusiastic about comics. And I think, in a sense, the fact that it was the Reading for Pleasure conference was the most important thing. That's what I would really like to do, to encourage in young people the joy of reading, whether it's comics or books or whatever, because there is a huge joy in reading, and nowadays that's in competition with all the other media, all of which I love, with films and animation and the internet and everything. But I think if you can inculcate that habit of sitting down quietly and having that very personal, intimate joy of reading a book, I think that's probably one of the most valuable things that you can give to children at school. Anyway, so that's the quick summary of what I did, and it's now time to hand over to the next incumbent. We haven't released that name yet, so I'm going to try and build the mystery for a bit. I think we have a little slideshow towards the end, which will give you further clues. But I'd just like to say that I'm really pleased to hand it over to this gentleman, because he's very well liked and very well respected in the world of comics. Very prolific, fantastic artist, and his work is known to millions worldwide. There is one thing about him though, he's very pleased, I think, to be the comics laureate, but there was one thing that he coveted more, and that was that he really wanted to be the Lego laureate. But anyway, we'll show you a few more clues and then I'll officially hand over. See if you can get some. No, not him, that's me. No horses.
that scene. So I'm very, very pleased to hand over the comic storyship to Mr. Charlie Adler.
Taking that off now. It's time to get serious. And anyone that knows me must be quite unused to seeing me with a speech as well. So, thank you very much. This is quite an honour, and I know it's a cliche, but it's utterly unexpected. When Julie emailed me a few months back and said that I was in the running, I didn't even know I was in the running, let alone in the running to get the position. And then when she said, would you be prepared to think about something like that, I thought, well, it's an opportunity I can't really not take up. And then a few days later she said, well, it's you. I was seriously bowled over. It's just really nice to be recognised like this, because I think a lot of people expect it to go to a writer, to be honest. Only because they tend to be more erudite than us artists. We just tend to sit in the background and draw stuff, and you know, the writer goes out and is the spokesperson for whatever project you tend to be working on. So it's really amazing to be, you know, asked to do something like this. I would really like to thank Julie, Carol, and everyone involved with the Lakes Festival for this, and putting on what I consider to be the best festival in this country, bar none. So thank you. Obviously, thanks to Dave over there for doing such sterling, amazing work for the first 2 years, and I really hope I can carry on his good work and keep the flag flying for our industry. And also thanks to Chris and Creative Concern, the PR guys who've been PRing the hell out of this. And the amount of interest they've drummed up is utterly baffling. It's amazing. So brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. So, where are we going to go? I'm really, like I say, I'm really excited to be doing this, and the next 2 years are very much full of stuff to do. We've been talking, in secret about what's coming up, and yeah, we've got some very exciting stuff. Obviously, there's the UK-based stuff. What we're going to do slightly differently, hopefully, in the next couple of years, is take this internationally. So we've got a few trips already lined up, one to Toronto, one to Amiens in France next year, so that's very exciting. And we will be lining up some very interesting UK appearances as well. So next year will be full of fun, that's for sure. On a personal note, I'd like to take this to an area which perhaps it hasn't been covered so much, which is people, children and adults who have reading difficulties, problems like that. My eldest son is dyslexic, so I can so see where this is coming from. And the only thing he's ever read willingly in his life, and he's 15, is comics. And it's amazing when he does sort of latch onto something. He's never read anything else. Everything else has been hard work for him to read. And yeah, I admit, he reads The Walking Dead, which is fantastic. And perhaps it's and free, yes. And it's nice to know that my grumpy 15-year-old teenage son thinks in some small part his dad might be quite cool. So yeah, so hopefully we're going to approach it from that educational point of view and see, and talk about things, talk about how comics are not what's a good word? They're accessible, especially to people with dyslexia and things like that, where you you give them a book to read, you know, the amount of words on a page is incredibly off-putting, whereas a comic, there's an accessibility to a comic. They're non-threatening almost. So we hope to do a lot of that work in the next couple of years. Comics have been in my life since I was about 6. I've already, obviously in my previous incarnation of a snowy bashing Asterix lover, I've already described my love of Asterix and how my dad used to go to the garage to get me Asterix books, when I was about 6 years old. At the same time, my dad also bought me the UK version of The Mighty World of Marvel #1 when I was about 6. So from the age of 6, I've been reading comics, and hopefully I cannot wait, as my position as the comic laureate, to communicate my personal enthusiasm for the love of this fantastic medium. So, on to the next 2 years. Thank you very much.
And just to emphasise the fact that this is a voluntary post, all the time that they put into this is free, and also they kind of travel the globe. I mean, as Charlie was just saying, we've got plans for Toronto and Amiens next year. So thank you, but I'm going to move swiftly on because we've got one more award if you're willing to stick with us, and it's one that we've just recently managed to pull off, and I'm going to invite onto the stage Steve McGarry, who's going to explain it to you pithily.
Two things. A smarter man than me would have made some notes. And a much smarter man than me would have insisted on a monitor because I don't know what slides are coming up. But basically, I'm here not only for fun, as an Englishman who lives in the States, but here as a representative of the National Cartoonist Society. Have we got some slides?
Yeah.
Do I press the thing? Oh, there we go. The NCS was formed 70 years ago, just after the war, when a group of cartoonists got together to draw for the troops. And they had so much fun that they decided to form a society. And pretty much every major American cartoonist that you've heard of is probably an NCS member. Peanuts, Charles Schulz, Chester Gould, Dick Tracy. So many female cartoonists, Lynn Johnson, Ann Telners, Kathy Guy's White. As soon as I got to the States in '89, I'd been a member of the Society of Strip Illustrators, the Cartoonist Club of Great Britain, I had a press card and all that. But the first thing I did was to join the NCS. And round about that time, we started a chapter system. And we now have regional chapters all over the States, something like 13. So if any cartoonists go out to the States, wherever they're visiting, there's a chance that there's an NCS chapter there. You can see there's me and Sergio Aragonés, Dave Burke from MAD, Bern Hogarth, one or two great names there. Every year we do the Reuben Awards, and we take them to a different city every year. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, that's a gaggle of McGarrys, that's the two boys when they were younger, and Debbie and I. That was a cruise to the Bahamas, that was our first Reubens. But we take it to a different city every year. You can see recently in New Orleans, Las Vegas, where was that? Jersey City. And we give out probably what we like to think are the Oscars of cartooning. So we give out the top cartoonists in, I think, a dozen divisions, advertising, comic strips, comic panels, etc., etc. But our highest honour, we like to think the highest accolade that a cartoonist can get is the Reuben Award. And as you can see, some of the previous winners are Gary Trudeau, Gary Larson, Will Eisner, Jack Davis, Bill Watterson, Matt Groening from The Simpsons. We have great events, fabulous events. That's us roasting Sergio Aragonés. We'll skip that one. That was me doing the full Monty. My boys grew up around the NCS. That's Glenn Keane, you might know from Tarzan, Beauty and the Beast. He's probably one of Disney's top cartoonists ever. Chris Brown, who does Hagar the Horrible. We have booths at the major Comic-Cons. That's Luke and I in San Diego at the NCS booth a couple of years ago. And in actual fact, I'm really proud. Luke was one of the speakers this year nominated a couple of times. He was a featured speaker this year in Memphis. I was the president for 2 terms. So I served 2 terms as NCS president, and I'm now the president of the NCS Foundation. And that's the charitable arm. We give out scholarships. That's me presenting a $5,000 scholarship, which we present every year to an outstanding college student. We do a lot of children's work. This was from Memphis this year. Our Cartooning for Kids programs. Basically, we went to St. Jude Hospital, I think about 60 or 70 of us, drew for the kids all day. Then we did some fundraisers we actually raised $100,000 to fight children's cancer in one night. So we do a lot of good things, and to this day, a lot of NCS cartoonists still do the USO trips. So they'll go to Germany to visit the injured troops. They'll go to the war zones, to Iraq, to Afghanistan. So that's pretty much the NCS. A couple of years ago, Julie and I started talking, and we on that theme that Charlie just mentioned about, let's take this thing internationally. We really want to support this festival as much as we can. We want to sort of reach out to European cartoonists in particular and say, look, part of the NCS remit is to promote the art form and to foster good fellowship, if you will, between cartoonists all over the world. So, I'm going to have to remember this. We decided to come up with a special award that we're going to present each year in partnership with the Lakes. And it will be called the NCS, I had to write it down. It's a long title. We need a nickname for this thing. But right now it's the NCS Sergio Aragones International Award for Excellence in Comic Art. And it will be given to the Outstanding Cartoonist of the Year, a comic artist, animator, cartoonist, whoever it may be, chosen in partnership with the Lakes and the NCS, and we'll present that each year at the Lakes, and we'll also make a fuss of this thing at the Reuben Awards every year in the States. So I think we've got some Sergio comments, haven't we? So with that, I'll hand you over to Sergio.
We've got some slides, actually.
We've got some slides.
I've been creating an award.
Friends of the Lake International Comic Festival. For so many years I've been wanting to go for work or other reasons I haven't been able to make it, but this time I'll be there. I have so many friends and colleagues that I haven't seen in so long, and I know I'll have a great time and be a pleasure to see you all. See you there.
Thank you, Steve, and Steve for brokering this amazing opportunity for us. We're absolutely delighted to be able to participate in this award. Sergio, as he says, is planning to come next year, which is fantastic, and we'll make the first award here in Kendal. Yay! So watch this space. But anyway, we've well run over time. I apologise. These guys' fault, not mine. What we're going to do is hand straight back to the abominable. This Thompson stuff. Hannah Berry, who's going to reveal who the winners and who the losers are of this evening's debate. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Julie. I have a clipboard here because this is business again. So if you remember from the first poll that we took, Asterix was behind at 82 and Tintin was ahead at 90. I don't go in for those kinds of reality programs where they draw out the climax, so I will not do that. But I have to say, I swear to God, this is true. This is exactly what the numbers came out. I mean, you saw me add them up, right? I had a high tech. So yeah, I had a high tech adding machine there. at 99. Tintin is at 98. Hand out the prizes.
Okay, we're going to start with, we'll start with the winners. And they get the most sought after, they'll be on eBay tomorrow, no doubt, series of well-done medals. So I'm going to be your winning assistant, and you're going to hand these things out to these guys. And we're going to have lots of rapturous applause. Or whatever. I want to extend a huge thank you to Lancaster University, who put this event on essentially with us this evening, and also the and I can never pronounce this, I apologise Edward, Wallonie Bruxelles International, who've helped fund the post of Benoit Peters and to support this event as well. Thanks to Arts Council England, who are our main funder, without whom we would not have reached this stage in just 4 years. Thank you to all the international guests in the room. Thank you, of course, to the participants. I'll come back to them just before we go. Thanks to the universe. But anyway, thank you very much for participating so wholeheartedly in this and for being very patient with the odd little glitch. But hey, you know, we put on something quite ambitious, I think, and we pulled it off.